The price of a dream. Amina had always looked at the stars with wonder. Even as a child, she would lie on the cool earth outside their small, crumbling house and trace constellations with her finger, whispering the names she had read in borrowed textbooks. She was brilliant. Everyone in the village knew it. The teachers at the local school would shake their heads in admiration whenever she solved problems beyond her years. Amina is different, they would say. She will go far. But dreams, no matter how bright, could not fill empty stomachs. Her family was poor, so poor that her mother, who once hummed cheerful songs while stirring pots of maize porridge, had long since stopped singing. Her father, once a proud and hardworking farmer, had grown weary, his strength drained by years of droughts and failing harvests. Her younger siblings, 2 boys and a little girl, looked up to her with wide, expectant eyes, trusting that their big sister would make everything better. Amina carried the weight of their hopes like a second skin. At school, she was the best student in every subject, always first in her class. Her teachers encouraged her, and when the results of the national scholarship exams were posted, her name was at the top. She had won a full scholarship to study medicine at one of the best universities in the country. It was her chance, her way out. But life, as she soon learned, was rarely fair. The day the letter arrived, her mother wept, not with joy, but with sorrow. "How will we survive, Amina?" her mother asked, her voice cracking under the weight of worry. "Your father can barely bring in enough to feed us. The boys are growing. Your sister needs clothes. If you leave, who will help us?" Amina clutched the letter, her heart pounding. She wanted to shout, to tell her mother that this was her only chance at a better life, that if she became a doctor, she could provide for them all. But how could she say that when she looked around and saw her siblings, their ribs pressing against their thin shirts, their hungry eyes filled with silent pleas? That night, Amina stayed awake, staring at the ceiling, the scholarship letter clutched to her chest. The words blurred through her tears. She had a choice to make. The scholarship letter sat on the wooden table for 3 days, untouched, as if Amina's future had been sealed inside an envelope she no longer had the right to open. She went about her daily chores in silence, carrying buckets of water from the well, sweeping the yard, cooking maize porridge for her siblings, each task feeling heavier than before. The burden of choice pressed against her chest, making it hard to breathe. Her father barely spoke about the scholarship. He would sit on the old stool outside, staring at the dying farmland, lost in his own quiet defeat. Her mother, on the other hand, wouldn't stop talking about it, not in excitement, but in fear. "You know we can't survive without you, Amina," she murmured one night, stirring a pot of soup so thin that the broth barely clung to the spoon. "If you leave, who will help us? Your father's strength is not what it used to be. The boys are too young to work. And your sister," she shook her head. "We need you here." Amina clenched her fists beneath the table, her nails digging into her palm. "But Mama, this is my chance. If I go to university, I can become a doctor. I can send money home, more than I ever could by staying here." Her mother turned to her, eyes filled with the pain that Amina could not bear to meet. "And how will we eat while we wait for your future to arrive?" The words stung. That night, as she lay on the thin mattress she shared with her little sister, Amina stared at the ceiling, thinking of all the sacrifices her parents had made for her. The nights her mother went hungry so they could eat. The days her father worked under the scorching sun, hoping for a harvest that never came. Could she really leave them behind? The next morning, she made her decision. She took the scholarship letter and walked to the wealthiest house in the village, the home of Mr. Ayu, the merchant. Everyone knew him. He owned the biggest farm, the largest stall, and had more money than anyone in town. But more importantly, he had a son who needed a very smart wife to help him manage his businesses. Amina knocked on the grand wooden door, her hands trembling. Mr. Ayu answered, his sharp eyes scanning her from head to toe. "What do you want, girl?" She swallowed hard and held out the letter. "I have something to offer you." His gaze flickered over the scholarship letter before a slow, knowing smile spread across his face. And just like that, Amina's future was no longer hers. The village buzzed with whispers when news broke that Amina was to marry James Ayu, the merchant's son. Some called it fortune, a poor girl securing a future in the wealthiest home in town. Others, especially the older women, saw the sadness in her eyes and shook their heads. "She sold her dreams," they murmured, "a bird that will never fly." The wedding was arranged swiftly. There were no grand celebrations, no dancing or feasting like other village weddings, just a quiet ceremony, with Amina dressed in borrowed gold jewelry, standing beside James, a man she barely knew. James was not cruel, but he was indifferent. He saw Amina as nothing more than a prize, a smart girl traded for security, like a fine piece of cloth in the market. He did not care for her dreams, nor did he ask if she was happy. His life was already planned. He would inherit his father's business, manage the farm, and expand their wealth. Amina's role was simple: bear his children, keep his home, and be grateful. She moved into the grand house, where the walls were thicker and the food was plenty, but Amina still felt empty. At night, she lay in a bed softer than anything she had ever known, but sleep did not come easily. The ceiling above her was not the open sky she once loved, and there were no stars to whisper her dreams to. The scholarship letter had been left behind in her old home, tucked away in a drawer she would never open again. The house was silent in the way that wealth makes things quiet. No crying children, no laughter by the fire, no stories shared under the stars. Just the endless, suffocating quiet of comfort she had never asked for. One evening, as she sat in the courtyard, watching the sun bleed into the horizon, she felt it, the weight of a life she had not chosen pressing down on her shoulders. She had saved her family from hunger, but she had paid for it with her own future. A single tear traced down her cheek. She had made her choice. But why did it feel like she had lost everything? The days passed, turning into months, each one blending into the next. Amina played her role well. She woke early, dressed in fine clothes, greeted her husband with quiet obedience, and oversaw the household affairs like a dutiful wife. On the surface, she was the picture of a woman who had won life's lottery, but inside, she was hollow. The dreams that once set her heart ablaze had dimmed to cold embers. The books she once devoured sat untouched in the study, gathering dust. Her hands, which had once traced her dreams onto paper, now traced the embroidered patterns on her expensive but heavy gowns. James was always busy, overseeing the family's business, managing the workers, speaking of profits and trade routes. He never asked her what she thought, never noticed how she barely spoke anymore. The house was a gilded cage, its beauty masking the bars that held her in place. At night, Amina would slip onto the balcony, looking up at the vast sky. The stars were still there, distant and unmoved by the choices she had made. Sometimes, she whispered her regrets to them, as if they might carry them away. But nothing changed. One evening, as she prepared for yet another formal dinner with the merchants and their wives, She caught her reflection in the mirror. The woman staring back at her was unfamiliar. Her face was the same, but the light in her eyes was gone. Amina turned away, unable to look any longer. She had always thought that giving up her dream would be a sacrifice she could endure, that saving her family would be worth any price. But what she hadn't realized was that some losses do not fade with time, some wounds do not heal, and some dreams, once abandoned, never return. Amina had always believed that pain was something you felt in your body. Hunger, exhaustion, the sting of a wound. But now she understood that the deepest pain was silent. It was the ache of a dream buried alive, the slow erosion of hope, the realization that she had given up not just a future, but herself. The house remained grand, the wealth never wavered, but she felt smaller with each passing day. Then, one evening, a letter arrived. It was from one of her old school teachers, a woman who had always believed in Amina's potential. The letter was brief, but its words struck Amina like a bolt of lightning. Amina, you once told me that the greatest tragedy was not failure, but never trying at all. If there is still a spark left in you, chase it before it fades completely. For the first time in a long time, Amina felt something stir inside her, a quiet, stubborn ember that refused to be extinguished. That night, she sat across from James at dinner, watching as he ate without a word, discussing business matters with himself more than with her. Finally, she spoke. I want to go back to school. James didn't even look up. For what? I never stopped wanting it, she said, keeping her voice steady. It was never just a childish dream, he retorted. And who will raise the children? I will, and I will study too. He scoffed, dabbing his mouth with a napkin before meeting her gaze. You have a good life, Amina. What more do you need? Education won't change anything. You are my wife. Your place is here. She had expected resistance, but the sheer dismissiveness of his words stung. No, she said, it's not. His smirk was cold. Women like you always want too much. That night, she sat by the window, the letter clenched in her hands. She thought of the girl she had once been, the one who believed she could be more. She thought of her children, the lives she was shaping. Would she teach them to settle for a life that didn't fulfill them? Or would she show them that dreams were worth fighting for? The next morning, she made a decision. She wasn't leaving that night. She wasn't going to pack a suitcase in the dead of night and vanish. She would fight for this. Over the following weeks, she made arrangements. She reached out to people who could help, applied for a scholarship, found a way to balance her studies with raising her children. Kweku mocked her at first, then ignored her, but she did not stop. The day she received her acceptance letter, she did not tell him. She told her children, because this was for them too. And when she finally stepped onto the path toward her dreams, she did not run. She walked, steady and sure. Because she wasn't escaping, she was becoming. The end. Thank you for watching. Please take a moment to subscribe, leave a comment, and give us a thumbs up. For more African Safari Tales.